we're at a point in time coming off of a wild Saturday of college football. People are consistently peeking over at this board. He actually would not be my number one overall pick, nor would I bet him to be the number one overall pick. I think you got that next wave of NFL players, which is so enticing, which when you see Jaden Daniels come into the NFL and you go, I can get something like that with a guy with just as good an arm.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
It's a new era in CFB to start off this year, put on full display.
My take on this game is simple. I know some people will be upset about it. Good riddance to the Pac-12.
Can you do it in terms of the week to week to week?
I don't see a pathway for this team to miss the college football playoffs.
We want to make sure you have those best bets in the entirety of our betting cards.
That was
playing!
But he had that program was already going there!
Only on SportsGrid.
I do a sliding DiVincenzo to the one. Obviously, Terrence Shannon Jr., that is actually dynamic offensively and defensively. So we'll see how it works. I think it's a little bit of a work in progress. Do both teams win? Yes. I don't think at the end of the day, Minnesota could have afforded to keep Cat, Rudy, and Ant with that amount of money.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
I think the Washington Commanders are one of the best bets to win it all, or at the very least win the NFC.
Their offensive line, I do want to say one thing. It's very average. The coaching is good. They're getting good coaching from Bobby Johnson, their line coach. Over from the Giants, but they've kind of overachieved. Let's call it like it is. Daniels has taken them up. Look, that division's not very good. They could very well win it over the Eagles, and the Cowboys. They're not a Super Bowl team.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish here on this Tuesday. Time to recap a little Monday Night Football action. Some big news, of course, in the game and off the field for the Jets as well. We'll get to that in just a few minutes. In addition, Sam McQuillan is back from Las Vegas at G2E. He'll weigh in on the latest technology and everything happening with sports betting going on across the country. A big week in college football. Bill Bender joins us here on the show. And also my good buddy, OJ McDuffie, former wide receiver of the Miami Dolphins, is going to join us and preview the upcoming game against the Indianapolis Colts this week. But on the field this week, the Las Vegas Raiders and New York Jets are going to look a little bit different. And the reason why is because they finally consummated trade, as Davante Adams is reportedly headed to the Jets. And in exchange, it's a conditional draft pick, a third-round pick, goes to the Raiders for Davante Adams. And it could become a second-round pick if Adams ends up being first or second team AP All-Pro, or if he's on the roster for the AFC Championship game or Super Bowl. So that won't be the Jets. It would have to be another team. Maybe that's the way that they get that pick too. The Bills and Jets last night played deep into the fourth quarter, and naturally there were a lot of mistakes by both sides, missed kicks, and a lot of penalties in this game. But the Buffalo Bills came out on top, 23-20 in this one, as Josh Allen led his team to victory. Ray Davis, their running back, filling in for James Cook, who was a late scratch, also pivotal in this one, as the Buffalo Bills have now won 3 straight road games. Pretty impressive. And Buffalo still looking at a potential AFC East crown. Remember, at the beginning of the season, it was thought that the Dolphins or even the Jets could potentially challenge for that. But as of right now, Buffalo's opened up a couple-game lead in the division, and Sean McDermott, head coach of the Buffalo Bills, supremely impressed with going on the road, division opponent, and winning yet again.
Good division win on the road. Last 3 games in a row on the road. Thought it was a gritty win. Josh, led by Josh. Offense got off to a good start, established a line of scrimmage early in the game. Ray Davis really stepped up in James's absence. Thought he ran tough, ran physical, protected the ball. Red zone offense, red zone defense, a big difference in the game. And then Taryn with a great play at the end, and T-Rap had another great play breaking up the pass in the end zone there. We've got a lot to clean up. We've got to be more disciplined. We can't beat ourselves. Situational football, we've got to go back and re-examine the situation at the end of the half with the sideline play. We were defending the sideline with the potential for the field goal, and left a Hail Mary check to a Hail Mary, and so we've got to go back and re-examine that as well. So a lot to clean up, and we've got a short week to do it.
And the New York Jets have a lot to clean up too. They fall to 2-4, although they will have now Davante Adams in Aaron Rodgers' backfield and front field as wide receiver, and so naturally he and Garrett Wilson are an excellent tandem, but that wouldn't stop the fact that Rodgers believed last night penalties were one of the big reasons for the disappointing outcome in the game, including penalties that were called against the other team and his own.
Yeah, it seemed a little ridiculous. Some of them seemed really bad, including the roughing the passer on me. That's not roughing the passer. I was going to play sarcastic ball if we're going to call those things. And I thought the one on Kinlaw was not roughing the passer either. So, nothing. We had chances. We had a walk-in touchdown with Braylon. And we had a phantom holding call. Had a chance with G twice. So we had our chances. Well, I think there's concern, but that's important. We need to get going. This was a golden opportunity. Some games you win in the NFL, and some games you give away. This was a giveaway. We're terrible in the red zone. Missed 2 field goals. Didn't convert on a 2-minute drive. We had plenty of chances. Had the momentum. Had good drives. Moved the ball up and down the field. So disappointing.
The New York Jets, of course, with the big trade for Davante Adams. We'll see if that helps them down the road. Now, the New York Mets did not need any help last night. They put a 6 spot up very early on the Los Angeles Dodgers, who went with opener Ryan Brazier. It did not work out well. Dodgers go on to, of course, fall in this one to the Mets, 7-3. Lots of run scoring early. Dodgers definitely had their opportunities late in the game, but a couple of key moments inducing double plays. They end up falling in this one. But Dave Roberts, the manager of the Dodgers, seems sort of undeterred, 1-1, going back to Citi Field in New York, knowing that his key bullpen pieces are available for the next few games.
I think as far as kind of where we're at, it never feels good losing. But to feel that you've got your leverage guys ready to go for the next 3 games, I feel really good about that. So it was as least costly as it could be because of what Honeywell did, Banda, Henriquez did. And so that was certainly helpful. And, offensively, we got a chance to see their guys, their leverage guys, and force some up downs. And I think that was beneficial too.
Uneventful first game, of course, in the American League last night. If you weren't watching Monday Night Football, maybe you were locked into the Yankees and Guardians. Yankees went up 3-0 early and basically went on to win. Relatively easy. 5-2, the final. Carlos Rodon was fantastic. He struck out 9 batters in the game and talked about what was working for him afterward.
Yeah, it seemed like it was mostly fastball slider, mixed in some changeups, a couple cutters. And like I said, I thought Austin had a good idea and good game plan behind the plate. And I was just throwing to where he wanted me to throw it. It was, the goal was just try to stay in control of, what I can do, obviously physically and emotionally, and I thought I executed that well tonight.
Yankees did a good job winning Game 1. We'll see what happens later tonight. If they can win Game 2, would put them in a commanding 7-game series lead, potentially. Garrett Cole's on the mound tonight for the Yankees. They're minus 172 on the money line. Tanner Bibby will start. For the Cleveland Guardians, the total is 7. We'll have this game covered for you tonight on In Game Live. Meanwhile, the Mountain West's rebuild is nearly complete. They're adding a new school to the mix, and it will be Hawaii. They're headed to the Mountain West in 2026. That gives them 8 full members. If the Mountain West adds NIU and Toledo, it would make the league's only conference schools in 5 different time zones. Of course, Hawaii, far west as well. All right, some other news from the National Football League. Hassan Reddick, who hasn't played a single down this season, has been given the ability to request a trade. According to NFL insider Diana Rossini, we'll see if that ends up happening. He's currently on the roster of the Jets without playing. Washington Commanders defensive tackle Jonathan Allen is sitting out the rest of the season. He has a left pectoral muscle injury that he suffered against the Baltimore Ravens. Big loss there. Jim Harbaugh is going to wear a heart monitor against the Broncos this coming week. He had some palpitations and had to leave the game briefly last week. And also Nick Sirianni, head coach of the Eagles, apologized for his interaction with the group of fans at the end of the game on Sunday, said that he was trying to bring energy and enthusiasm and is sorry for how his energy was directed at the fans in the game. So essentially he got reprimanded and then said sorry. In terms of the Houston Texans, their defensive tackle Mario Edwards Jr. going to be out for a bit. 4-game suspension for violating the league's substance abuse policy, the NFL announced on Monday. Roger Goodell, by the way, in London, dropped this pretty big bombshell. Previously, they said that there would not be a Super Bowl outside of the U.S., but now they're saying that there's a chance it could happen, maybe even in London. We will see. Good news for 49ers wide receiver Ricky Pearsall. He is back for the first time since being shot. In addition to college football, can you imagine if Cam Rising comes back to Utah for another season, potentially eligible for an 8th season in college football, as he's going to miss the rest of the season? Kyle Whittingham said on Monday that Isaac Wilson starts for the injured Rising, at least for the time being. Texas's number 1 wide receiver Isaiah Bond is day-to-day because of an ankle injury. They take on Georgia coming up this Saturday. Oregon coach Dan Lanning said that, he put 12 men on the field late. We talked about this on the show yesterday. 3 games in college football tonight. Troy at South Alabama, Kennesaw State at Middle Tennessee, and Louisiana Tech at New Mexico State. You may be wondering, why is there college football on Tuesdays? Well, once the regular season ends in Major League Baseball, college football takes over some Tuesdays and Wednesday nights. College football takes over our show as Bill Bender joins us next.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
I do think they come back, and I think they win this game, but they've got to do it decisively. I think they've got to get that confidence back because they went out there, and like I said earlier, Kentucky almost beat Georgia. Kentucky almost did beat Ole Miss, and I think what you're going to see in this conference, if you don't play well and you're a top 10 team in the SEC, you're going to get knocked out by one of those top 25 teams in the SEC if you're not ready to play.
Powered by SportsGrid.
Guardians, despite being at home in the land, were a home underdog against Tarek Skubal. Enter Lane Thomas, maybe one of the under-the-radar trade deadline acquisitions being dealt from the Nationals. He was huge in the ALDS.
A heavy favorite for the New York Yankees in the series. You're going to look to their best 2 ball players to be those MVPs. That's Juan Soto and it's Aaron Judge.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. What a fun weekend it was in college football. We've got a huge game coming up this week in the SEC. Let's bring in Bill Bender from Sporting News. Bill, it was interesting. College football's day slate was about as poor as any that I can remember this season. You had the Red River rivalry, which was not one, and then a bunch of junk, honestly, during the day. And then we got to the night, and my gosh, was this the most insane Saturday night between Ohio State and Oregon, LSU in their game, I believe it was against Mississippi. The Gators against Tennessee going to overtime. There were so many Penn State, USC later in the day as well. I mean, I didn't know which way to go. I was like flipping. Oh, should I go here? Should I go there? And then some of the games were running over. I couldn't find the games. I mean, it was a fantastic weekend of college football, but all really within the same 2-hour window.
Yeah, I had 3 TVs on too, and even baseball on. So I was all over the place and trying to figure out the remote controls. But once it got to that night window, you're absolutely right. And something to keep in mind, with these top 5 games, we've seen it with Alabama, Georgia. We've seen it with Ohio State, Oregon. Could see it with Texas, Georgia this week. Watch the overs. These are high-scoring games. We can talk about how much we love a team's defense, but these teams are getting up and down on each other.
Yeah, they are. And again, the end to that Ohio State-Oregon game is all that's being talked about, and probably fair enough for good reason. First, of course, with Oregon putting 12 men on the field, I mean, the competition committee is going to have to look at this because every other team is going to try and do shenanigans like this at the end of the game. And then, I don't know what to say about the end of the game as well, just not having awareness there with the amount of time that was left there on the clock. But let's give credit to Oregon for winning, but also understanding that I don't know if Ohio State's kicker is any good, Bill, you'd have to tell me, but they probably would have had a shot for a 50-yard field goal to win the game.
A couple things here, and I think the perception is they're going to run it back in December. You can see that in the betting odds reflected that Oregon and Ohio State are basically co-favored to win the Big Ten now. It was a great win for Oregon, but they leave 10 points on the board, in my opinion. Missed extra point, botched snap, went for 2 and didn't get it. Had a player get ejected for spitting on another player. It was absurd. And then on Ohio State's side, you mentioned, I've lived in Columbus my whole life. I know how it goes when they lose a game. We treat it like the Zapruder film. Was there a second left? Was this could have happened? They mismanaged it. I think it comes down to Will Howard will learn from it. They need to trust their kicker in late game situations. You saw that with Georgia a couple of years ago, and both teams will learn from it. But I do feel like they'll play again in December. Oregon for sure. Ohio State's path is a little more complicated because they got to go through Penn State on the road.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would also say, Bill, that, I mean, I don't know that it's as formidable as I thought. And, they'll have a whiteout there for that game. I understand. Happy Valley's tough to play. But I got to tell you, of all the teams near the top, Bill, I'm at least impressed with Penn State. It seems like they're down to the wire in so many of these games. And you know what happens in college football like this. Eventually they get bit in the fourth quarter. I think they're fortunate to be where they are.
Well, just the same, to come back from 20-6 on the road at USC, and we talked about that Pac-12 cross-country trend with the old Pac-12 schools last week. They were able to go out and get the win. I think Tyler Warren is a guy to watch, this tight end. He reminds me of Mark Bavaro. I get that that's a dated reference, but you remember the Giants tight end that dragged defenders forever. That's this guy. He's unguardable, and Drew Aller played through the mistakes. So it sets up November 2nd, provided Penn State takes care of their business. They'll get Ohio State at home. They haven't beat the Buckeyes since 2016, a game that they won on a legendary blocked field goal by Grant Haley. And that will be that moment, Craig, where we really find out. Is Penn State playoff worthy, national championship worthy, those kind of things. But I'll give them a little bit of credit. In the past, they lose that game at USC. They did come back and got it done.
Yeah, and even with 2 losses at this point, you would think they'd be in the back end of the top 12, almost no matter what happens with those big wins. Meanwhile, USC, boy, have they had some tough luck. 3 losses by 13 points in the conference. They're not going to make the playoff now, I don't think, but we'll look back at the end of the season, Bill, and maybe it's a good reminder for next year that USC should have had a little bit of better luck. They shouldn't have lost all these games.
Well, they're going to need to recruit differently up front. That's what it tells me. When you average over 5 yards per carry on defense against Michigan and Minnesota and Wisconsin, they did a little bit better against the run this week, but weren't able to close the game out. I don't think it means Lincoln Riley's on the hot seat. I realize that he's 5-8 in his last 13 games. I've seen that stat circulate around this morning, but there is a lot to learn for the Trojans and UCLA. I mentioned that cross-country trend. Again, those are the only schools that have lost at home with a Big Ten school coming to their house. So a lot to learn, a lot to adjust to as they learn in their new conference. And for Lincoln Riley, they're close, but they're not quite there.
Meanwhile, LSU stays alive in their pursuit of the college football playoff again, a game that went right down to the wire. They're plus 165 right now to make the college football playoff. Mississippi on the outside looking in, they're about 2-1. I mean, Bill, Tennessee, I watched that game against the Gators. The Gators should have won that game. I mean, that was as ugly mistake performance game as I can ever recall. The only thing I would say that's positive about Tennessee here, and then we can get it to LSU and Ole Miss, is that Tennessee hasn't had these blips yet this season. Every team's going to have one. I'm sure the Volunteers are hoping that that was the only one.
We'll learn all we need to know about them this weekend against Alabama. I mean, are they a true playoff contender? Will they trust Nico Iamaleava to throw the ball down the field, or will they play one hand behind their back? I mean, Alabama has flaws too. This was supposed to be a top 5 showdown. Now it's not an elimination game, but it's a game between 2 one-loss teams who aren't perfect at all. Alabama got lucky, quite frankly, against South Carolina. That makes that game that much more interesting.
Yeah, no, they did. And I think that game this week, certainly Georgia taking on Texas. When we have Bill, we'll have you on later in the week. We'll preview all the games. Thanks again for coming on NewsWire.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And yes, a lot to get into. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Bill Bender with us from Sporting News in the SEC, the number 1 versus the number 5 this week. Every week you get that in college football with this new college football realignment. All right, coming up next year on the show, we'll get a full preview of the game between Georgia and Texas as Ben Stevens joins us here on the show. We'll also hear from Kirby Smart and Steve Sarkisian. In addition, Sam McQuillan joins us. He went to G2E, which we were at, of course, out in Las Vegas, and he'll give us the very latest, what the sports betting operators are saying about their technology, and a whole lot more. You're watching NewsWire. This is on SportsGrid every day, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
I do think they come back, and I think they win this game, but they've got to do it decisively. I think they've got to get that confidence back because they went out there, and like I said earlier, Kentucky almost beat Georgia. Kentucky almost did beat Ole Miss, and I think what you're going to see in this conference, if you don't play well and you're a top 10 team in the SEC, you're going to get knocked out by one of those top 25 teams in the SEC if you're not ready to play.
Powered by SportsGrid.
Guardians, despite being at home in the land, were a home underdog against Tarek Skubal. Enter Lane Thomas, maybe one of the under-the-radar trade deadline acquisitions being dealt from the Nationals. He was huge in the ALDS.
A heavy favorite for the New York Yankees in the series. You're going to look to their best 2 ball players to be those MVPs. That's Juan Soto and it's Aaron Judge.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. If you thought the game between Ohio State and Oregon was high-flying and exciting last week, it was just one of many games on the college football slate that were great right down to the finish. I have a feeling we're going to be getting another one this week, and we'll preview it. It's time now for the SportsGrid Sound-Off. Well, it's interesting that, Georgia takes on Texas this week. Had Georgia beaten Alabama, we could have had a number 1 versus number 2 matchup in the SEC and in college football this week. Of course, Georgia lost to Alabama. Alabama lost the next week to Vanderbilt. And so here we are with Georgia ranked number 5 in the country. They haven't played their best football over the last few weeks, to say the least, while Texas has certainly been rolling. Let's get a preview of the big game in the SEC with our very own Ben Stevens.
Maybe the most significant single Saturday in the SEC all year long is this Saturday, week 8 of the 2024 college football season. A historic matchup in now SEC territory. It's a top 5 tilt. Number 1 Texas plays host to number 5 Georgia. The first top 5 matchup in Austin in 18 years, since 2006. Texas is perfect, unbeaten. 6-0, favored in all 6 games, covering in 5, and now a 3.5-point favorite against number 5 Georgia. The last time the Bulldogs were booked as an underdog at the very start of the 2021 college football season against Clemson in the year's opener, the Bulldogs won that game outright. What a Saturday awaits in Austin. It's number 1 Texas. It's number 5 Georgia. Craig, back to you.
Should be a fun one, and I think that offense will not be at a premium. I can imagine a lot of points between these two teams scoring, especially on the side of the University of Texas. As Ben mentioned, they're 3.5-point favorites. So that poses an issue for the University of Georgia, who couldn't get out of their own way defensively in the first half a couple of weeks ago against the University of Alabama. That is the focus of the head coach of the Georgia Bulldogs, Kirby Smart, trying to lock down that Texas offense.
It's different because the deep shots, we're talking about 2 distinctly different offenses. But when you watch the tape, when we played correctly and used the right technique, we played well. We did not win every ball. Jonell Aguero's a great example. He covered the guy exactly like he was supposed to, and the guy made a great throw and a great catch. We're going to take that. We're going to say, you know what? We're not going to win every battle. We're not going to win every 50-50 ball, but we're going to try to win more than we lose. But when you don't cover someone, period, as a coach, you're going, what is wrong here? Like we didn't cover the guy. We had bad eyes. We looked in the backfield. Things that you harp on every day, they happen. That's what offenses do. They try to give you eye candy and try to get you looking at the wrong thing. We have to remove those, right? But the Texas presents a completely different, because they'll have you sitting in the line of scrimmage because you think it's a run and they ran right by you. They'll have you looking at a motion and you don't see the guy running down the field past you. They got great speed on the perimeter. They got great size. So they present maybe a different challenge than Mississippi State, but a challenge.
And there's no question that the University of Texas wants this one for a lot of different reasons. First of all, to stay number 1 in the country. But second of all, this is going to be one of those games where the recruits show up. And the team that wins.
Every season you go through and, we invite a ton of recruits to games and different things. But every year, naturally, you have those 1 or 2 games that recruits really want to come to. And they kind of circle it even in the summertime. And this was one of those games. And so I think we're fortunate that we got a night draw, that it's a night game, and that allows a lot of those kids that play Friday nights to drive in or fly in on Saturday and be here for the ball game at night. And obviously a great atmosphere in DKR. And I'm sure we'll have the smoke and the light show and the drones and all the stuff CDC's got planned, for everybody. And I think the kids really appreciate that, to know that Longhorn Nation supports their team, but also see a really high level of football and see us compete against what I said, what has been the standard of college football here now for about half a decade or so. And so great opportunity to showcase what our program's about, great opportunity to showcase what our fan base is about, but also during the day, great opportunity to showcase what the University of Texas is about and what the city of Austin has to offer.
And of course, we'll have this game covered for you on college football shows throughout the day on Saturday. Coming up next here on the show, it's time for us to check in on G2E, what happened in Las Vegas, technology, sports betting, all the updates that you could possibly ask for. Coming up next with our guest contributor from Legal Sports Report, Sam McQuillan, joins us next here on the show. So make sure you stay with us here on SportsGrid as more NewsWire is up next.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
I do think they come back, and I think they win this game, but they've got to do it decisively. I think they've got to get that confidence back because they went out there, and like I said earlier, Kentucky almost beat Georgia. Kentucky almost did beat Ole Miss, and I think what you're going to see in this conference, if you don't play well and you're a top 10 team in the SEC, you're going to get knocked out by one of those top 25 teams in the SEC if you're not ready to play.
Powered by SportsGrid.
Guardians, despite being at home in the land, were a home underdog against Tarek Skubal. Enter Lane Thomas, maybe one of the under-the-radar trade deadline acquisitions being dealt from the Nationals. He was huge in the ALDS.
A heavy favorite for the New York Yankees in the series. You're going to look to their best two ball players to be those MVPs. That's Juan Soto and it's Aaron Judge.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Let's get a full rundown as to what happened at G2E in Las Vegas, a great tech conference, sports betting, all kinds of information out there. We learned a lot of updates, a lot of breaking news out of there as well. Sam McQuillan is with us. You can read, by the way, everything that happened over there over at LegalSportsReport.com. Sam, thanks again for shedding some knowledge here in terms of what happened there. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, absolutely, Craig. Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's get started, and let's start off with the possibility of sweepstakes coming to gaming, and it seems like it's a really hot, popular topic. I think if we did this a year ago, it would have been iGaming, would have been betting on iGaming was sort of the hot next thing that was going to happen. Sweepstakes is the new like click word out there. What does it mean?
Yeah, it was the thing everyone was talking about as the global gaming industry converged in Las Vegas for G2E, the Global Gaming Conference this year. Last year, everyone was talking about iGaming, as you're right, Craig. Also, everyone was talking about daily fantasy sports as well, and essentially what companies have done trying to blur the lines between different types of gaming and sports betting as it's become increasingly more popular and the size of the total addressable market has just boomed in the last couple of years. This year, it was all about sweepstakes gaming. Traditionally, online sports betting is only legal in states that pass laws to legalize online sports betting, but what we've seen popped up, especially over the past year, are a number of these startup companies which essentially are using what functions as a legal loophole to give a sports betting product or sports betting adjacent product in some of these large states like Texas and California that haven't legalized sports betting yet. You don't have companies like DraftKings and FanDuel there offering sports betting. So now what you saw this year is executives from those companies are starting to turn their eye towards what's essentially a new form of competition in a largely unregulated market. This year, Flutter CEO Peter Jackson, who owns FanDuel, said that his company won't partake in this kind of game until it is regulated, sort of indirectly calling on regulators in states to turn their attention to these sweepstakes games. Derek Stevens, the CEO of Circa Sportsbook, went even farther, saying that it's pretty clear these companies have found a loophole, calling out companies by name such as Fliff and Novig, and then pointing out the rigorous steps it took just to get his sports betting app legalized in 5 states. So essentially these companies allow you to deposit money, and then you get a sort of virtual currency back, which is then exchanged for another form of currency, which that you can then use to participate in this game. So it's a lot of hoops to jump through for a reason, because it's largely unregulated market. So we'll see if, like last year, the regulators start to turn their attention towards these new sweepstakes games. I think it's pretty notable that you have these big companies starting to talk about it. Obviously, it's starting to eat in their business.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, the other click words out there start with a P: parlays and props. We hear so much about this. People just don't want to make straight bets anymore. But props seem to be a hot topic for the CEO of DraftKings, Jason Robbins. Seems to be all in on this in NBA season, isn't he?
Yeah, definitely, Craig. If you set the over-under at 12.5 about how many times you would hear parlays or props mentioned at this conference, you would have smashed the over. Everyone's always talking about this. This is the stuff that has got the sports betting business really booming over the past couple of years, as you've seen these companies make a profit. And player props have been a big part of it. These, of course, are bets you place on people to have a certain stat in a game, whether it's throwing for 300 yards, hitting 2 3-pointers. DraftKings CEO Jason Robbins said he wants his company to be the preeminent place, the preeminent app that you bet on player props this NBA season. They're really popular with football, but he was talking about wanting to roll that success over to other sports like the NBA, where it is very player focused. You have fantasy, you can see the players' faces, they're not behind helmets. And it's a really cool way for these companies to try to market selling a narrative while you watch the game. You can also bet on different things you think will happen. Flutter CEO Peter Jackson also chimed in saying that 50% of all FanDuel users who bet on Monday Night Football last week were betting on same-game parlays. That's while parlay legs have gone up about 5% on average, essentially meaning that the bets have gotten harder to hit and the payouts have gotten bigger, but people seem to keep betting on them anyways. He also talked about a new feature that FanDuel is going to unveil in the coming weeks, which is going to allow you to set your own alternate lines on different player props. Instead of selecting someone to either have over 25 yards, 30 yards, you can now do 26, 27, 28, and really customize these bets. Given that Robbins was talking about also wanting to push player props behind parlays as well, it'll be really interesting to see what DraftKings does to compete with their chief competitor, as these have been essentially the two best companies on product, and that's why they're the number 1 and number 2 in the space right now.
Yeah, they are. And for time purposes, we're going to move ahead to our next story, but you can read more about just how popular these props are and even parlay bets over at LegalSportsReport.com. Basically, everybody betting on Monday night these days is doing it via props or parlays. But I do want to get to this because this is the only update we've gotten in weeks, Sam. And I'm glad that you could bring it to the table here. You know, here in Florida, the Hard Rock legalized sports betting, and then we thought that it was going to be like an influx of states in 2024 to legalize it. Now we're coming up on Missouri, of course, in November. No discussion whatsoever about the state of California in a couple of years of getting closer to legalizing sports betting. But I know that was a hot topic also at G2E. Did it seem like any progress is being made there?
Yeah, with not many states left to legalize, you're kind of still looking at the same ones you've been looking at, which is California, Texas, and Florida. The really big markets, they did touch on California a little bit. Contessa Brewer, NBC, asked Jason Robbins about California. He said ultimately that's going to be left up to the tribes. DraftKings and FanDuel had tried in the past to sort of circumvent the tribes with the failed ballot initiative a couple years ago, but now they've kind of been owning up to their mistakes, saying we really have to work with tribes to understand what exactly this has to look like, has to be on kind of all their own terms. DraftKings is taking more of a wait-and-see approach from what I gather, while FanDuel is working behind the scenes, trying to mend those relationships. And then on Florida as well, it has the monopoly there with Hard Rock, but their CEO did come out, Jim Allen, this week saying that he is open to essentially opening up the door to other brands like DraftKings and FanDuel to get in the state. Now, you might wonder why, if you have a monopoly, you would want to allow more competition in, especially more competition that has done sports betting, quite frankly, a lot better than Hard Rock has across the country. This would essentially be some sort of partnership where they get a percentage of the revenue for allowing DraftKings and FanDuel into the state. He said he sees a lot of value in the brands themselves, the customers that they bring, to essentially grow sports betting in the state where it's just a monopoly right now. But for the time being, these states are going to kind of be, status quo. We'll have to wait for the next legislative sessions, but there's no doubt that this will be what the industry is watching in terms of next states to legalize as we turn to 2025.
Yeah, Hard Rock running out of new people, Sam. That's the translation there. Move them on over to FanDuel and DraftKings. Give us some money back. That's the easy translation. All right, so the Major League Baseball Players Association. I want to be clear here. This is not Major League Baseball. This is the Players Association. All upset over the last few months seeing pictures of their players posted on all the sports betting websites. Fanatics is the first one to come to an agreement, but it's a non-exclusive agreement with the Players Association. So why do you think this happened? Was this a matter, Sam, and I'm guessing here, of them getting sued and saying, all right, we'll give you some money here and then we'll do some sort of agreement? It kind of feels that way. I'm not saying that that's what happened here, but why would they accept a non-exclusive agreement to do this?
Yeah, it's all about money, Craig. They sued a couple companies a couple weeks ago for having the likeness of players on the apps. When you bet a player prop, seeing Aaron Judge's face, Shohei Ohtani's face, you no longer see that on all the apps. Now, it's no coincidence. A few weeks later, they then signed a non-exclusive deal, like you made sure to mention, with Fanatics, so they can start doing that on their app. This is essentially just a move for them to get money from the other sports books, which I'm sure will be next in line to sign these kind of deals.
All right, Sam. Great to see you again. Thanks for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks, Craig.
All right, Dolphins and Colts coming up this week. One of the greatest players to put on a Dolphins uniform, OJ McDuffie, is going to join us next. We'll get a preview of that. I may ask him about Devontae Adams being traded too and how he feels about that as well. We'll be right back.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
I do think they come back, and I think they win this game, but they've got to do it decisively. I think they've got to get that confidence back because they went out there, and like I said earlier, Kentucky almost beat Georgia. Kentucky almost did beat Ole Miss, and I think what you're going to see in this conference, if you don't play well and you're a top 10 team in the SEC, you're going to get knocked out by one of those top 25 teams in the SEC if you're not ready to play.
Powered by SportsGrid.
Guardians, despite being at home in the land, were a home underdog against Tarek Skubal. Enter Lane Thomas, maybe one of the under-the-radar trade deadline acquisitions being dealt from the Nationals. He was huge in the ALDS.
A heavy favorite for the New York Yankees in the series. You're going to look to their best two ball players to be those MVPs. That's Juan Soto and it's Aaron Judge.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. It is always such an honor for me to have one of the greatest players who ever wore a Miami Dolphins uniform to join me on my show here. It is OJ McDuffie, former Miami Dolphins wide receiver, also great player, of course, at Penn State, sweating through Dolphins games, sweating through Nittany Lions games, and at the same time doing the Fish Tank podcast and having some of the greats that played for the Dolphins on his show as well. OJ, man, it is great to see you, my friend. How are you?
Craig, man, it's always great to see you, man. And let's not get it twisted here, man. If it weren't for you, I probably wouldn't be doing this sort of thing, man. This is you gave me opportunities back in the day, man. I've tried to continue and hopefully make you proud along the way, my brother.
No, you're doing awesome. I listen to the pod every week, and OJ is being too kind. One of my favorites in the game. All right, before we get to the Dolphins, because OJ has some great insight on what's going on there. It's sort of crazy these days in the NFL, where back when you played, OJ, if you were upset, you just ate it and you went home. These days, if you don't like where you play, you make enough noise, you get traded. I can't make heads or tails as to what the Jets are doing. Last night, they looked awful. On Monday Night Football, I guess they must have had a trade for Davante Adams because he's already in New York there. I don't get it. I don't understand how this makes them any better whatsoever. I think the Raiders, OJ, are going to end up on the good side of this, getting draft picks. That's not to say Davante Adams isn't great. He is. But, OJ, I mean, what are the Jets doing here? I'm having a hard time figuring this out. Maybe you have better insight than me.
Yeah, I really don't have much insight on it, but once Aaron Rodgers speaks, it seems like things happen, in New York. They say nothing happened with him, and there's no coincidence with him and Saleh being fired last week. I just know that they have a comfort level with each other, he and Davante Adams, and I think that he needs that blanket. You saw that a little bit last night where Williams had some opportunities to make some plays for him. He did not, but the other guys he's really comfortable with. Aaron's going to get his guys, man. And here's the thing about it. You talk about how guys usually just have to deal with what's going on. The NFL is becoming more like the NBA right now. Seems like some players are more like GMs. You see like the players are able to have more control and be able to go where they want to go. And good for them, because obviously the money is a lot better than when it was back in the day. And the control is okay. For the most part, but you also want to see these guys stick it out, try to find a way to win with their teams. I think that Aaron Rodgers, the GM, head coach, quarterback, is pulling a lot of strings there. And for me personally, look, Craig, you know me, I'm the biggest Dolphin homer out there. I really hope it does not work out for them.
Yeah, I know that. At least OJ's the one honest guy when it comes to that. They gave Mike Williams $10 million to probably not play anymore. It's sort of how anybody could trust what the Jets are doing is beyond me. All right, so the Dolphins have made all kinds of headlines, OJ, this year. I mean, you guys have been busy. I mean, from Tyreek Hill on and off the field to the injury to Tua, to them looking so good initially out of the gate, to now down to like the third quarterback. Let's start off with the receiver position, because this is what you know best. Tyreek Hill, probably the single best or second best wide receiver in the NFL, is just simply not getting the same amount of opportunities. I thought the last game against the Patriots, I saw a little bit of a silver lining coming. Do you think that continues against the Colts, who looked like maybe, they looked a little defensively challenged, a little bit more against Tennessee than they had looked early in the season?
Craig, I hope so. As Tyreek goes is how we go, most of the time. And if we don't get Tyreek going, then everything else is bottled up. We get those guys down the field. He and Jalen Waddle down the field, and we can get Achane going. We can get Mostert going. One thing I do know about this team is when we decide to run the football between the tackles, we've been pretty good. But we abandon that a lot because we're such a speed team. We want to use speed. Speed usually works on the edges. So we kind of rely on that a lot, and way too much, in my opinion. But I think we're starting to learn a lesson. These guys that we have up front, they're good blockers. They're athletic blockers. But I think it's more about positioning. But I think the inside game has been great. So if we can get the run game to work, which is, a lot of teams are playing this, we see a lot of cover two, whatever it might be, 2-man, regular two, just a too high shell all the time. They're inviting us to run the football. We have to continue along that path. So, but there are also, Craig, there are a lot of 2-man, there are a lot of cover 2 beaters out there. We have to find those 2 beaters for our guys to get open and get going.
Yeah, and, Huntley looked better, at least in the last game, than he had in the past. But that opens up the door now to this conversation. We know that Huntley starts this week against the Colts. The following game is the Arizona Cardinals. And, all I can do is watch these press conferences from Mike McDaniel. I don't think anybody really knows anything. But to me, he definitely left that door wide open, OJ, for Tua to come back. And to me, it sounds like a couple of weeks may be the case if he was this close to potentially returning for the Colts. I guess he's going to come back, OJ. I just don't know when. I'm sure you don't know when either. What do you make of this whole situation?
Yeah, Tua, this offense is totally designed around Tua's abilities and athletic and his attributes, whatever he brings to the table. So I know that they want Tua back. If Tua can come back healthy, and he's cleared, obviously he's going to come back. I mean, it makes no sense for him not to. So with that being said, this offense needs Tua. But when Tua was there, we struggled. We did struggle as an offense, which is surprising. 3 years in, Craig, it's kind of amazing that we didn't get better as an offense from the beginning of the season. When you look at the fact that you've got the same coordinator and head coach, you got the same quarterback, you got all the same weapons, this offense should have gotten better, and it wasn't. We just led for the first time the last game we played. We just led for the first time in regulation in 5 games, man. That's hard to imagine the team that put up a 70 spot, not so long ago. The fact we're going to score 5 touchdowns is a big problem for this team. We got to figure something out, and Tua is probably the best guy to remedy that. But I think another game with Huntley, he can be pretty good for us, but Tua's got to be the answer for this offense.
Yeah, I think he'll be back against the Cardinals at home. Just a guess for me. Again, I'm just reading people. That's kind of what I'm trying to do here. All right, OJ, we got to go here. Penn State, in or out of the college football playoff in the top 12 when it comes down to it? What do you think? In or out? 30
We're
seconds.
at 3 now. If we drop from 3 to out of 12 right now, Craig, I'd be totally disappointed, man. We've got some tough games coming up, of course. The Wisconsins, the Washingtons, the Ohio States. We got some big Indiana, I think, on the schedule. We got some big ones coming up.
All right. Thanks again, OJ. Great to catch up with you.
You too, brother.
All right, we'll be right back.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
I do think they come back, and I think they win this game, but they've got to do it decisively. I think they've got to get that confidence back because they went out there, and like I said earlier, Kentucky almost beat Georgia. Kentucky almost did beat Ole Miss, and I think what you're going to see in this conference, if you don't play well and you're a top 10 team in the SEC, you're going to get knocked out by one of those top 25 teams in the SEC if you're not ready to play.
Powered by SportsGrid.
Guardians, despite being at home in the land, were a home underdog against Tarek Skubal. Enter Lane Thomas, maybe one of the under-the-radar trade deadline acquisitions being dealt from the Nationals. He was huge in the ALDS.
A heavy favorite for the New York Yankees in the series. You're going to look to their best 2 ball players to be those MVPs. That's Juan Soto and it's Aaron Judge.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to the NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Did you catch any of the baseball game yesterday? The Diamondbacks were not playing, but a snake was. We'll get into that. Also, a side bet potentially for a boxing match coming up. And also, wow, a head coach taking a shot at a different team. Didn't expect that. It's time now for some last licks. You know what's really funny? Once upon a time, a long time ago. I don't know if people remember this, but Bill Parcells was the head coach of the New York Jets. Now, folks, this is before like pre-internet, pre-streaming. So this, for those of you who are on the younger side, younger than me, you may not remember this, but Bill Belichick was actually the head coach of the Jets for a day. People remember this? And he resigned immediately. Bill Parcells named Belichick after Parcells left the head coach, and then they had a speakerphone, and Belichick resigned. It was one of the more bizarre things. Like, basically, he just didn't want to be the head coach of the Jets. And he made that clear again last night. He was on that alternate cast, the Manning cast last night, and said that basically the Johnson family, the owners of the Jets, just go ready, aim, fire. And essentially went on to say that the team has no idea what they're doing. They make these rash decisions. And that would be proven today, too. This is before, maybe he knew about this trade last night. Who knows? He clearly was referring to the firing of Robert Saleh. It does seem like across the board, most people feel like Saleh shouldn't have been fired. Maybe eventually, maybe after 11 games or 12 games. But at least from most of the people in the know, they seem to say, hey, this was a trigger that was pulled too quick. And needless to say, did they give Robert Saleh a fair shot? And then they get Devontae Adams too? Like, why didn't they get him 3 weeks ago? This whole thing is bizarre with the Jets. But here's the bottom line. Bill Belichick doesn't take shots at anybody. Like, literally anybody. He doesn't give bulletin board material when he was a coach, before, after, at anyone. And here he is. He ain't going to be the head coach of the Jets anytime soon. And I think this all stems back to that. When Parcells basically left and they tried to push Belichick into becoming the head coach. You got to go back and check this video. It's online somewhere of Belichick on a speakerphone resigning before he's even the head coach. Crazy stuff. Before Belichick went on, of course, to the Patriots and everything else. Crazy stuff. All right. How about a side bet for the upcoming boxing match between Jake Paul and Mike Tyson? Folks, this is next month. This is next month live on Netflix. These two are going to fight. Jake Paul, whatever the take is going to be money-wise. I mean, Jake Paul's going to make millions and millions of dollars for this. He has offered Mike Tyson the chance to have a side bet on this fight of $5 million. This is correct. He has asked Mike Tyson, you throw $5 million in, I'll throw $5 million in, and the winner ends up getting the loot. Now, we know that Mike Tyson has $5 million. I'm not trying to say that he doesn't. This is going to come as a little bit of a shock to you, but I think Jake Paul may have more money than Mike Tyson. I think he probably has a lot more money than Mike Tyson. Tyson had some financial issues over the course of his career, of course, some related to Don King, some not. I don't know that Mike Tyson could just, I mean, I guess he could just throw down $5 million and just lose it, and that'd be fine with him. But a lot easier for Jake Paul to do it than for Mike Tyson. So I don't think that this is going to happen. I don't think there's going to be any side bet. Maybe 500,000, not 5 million. Seems like a lot. All right, finally, yesterday at Chavez Ravine in Los Angeles, after a pitcher came out of the game, he came over to the dugout and was walking in, and then they were going to give him a high five, congratulate him, and then all of a sudden there was a snake, a literal snake in the dugout, folks. There it is, yesterday in Los Angeles, trying to make its way. Well, here's what we know. The Dodgers lost that game. Usually when things like this happen, we've seen like rally monkeys, we've seen rally squirrels. You're not going to see the rally snake. Dodgers lost. So that's it. And by the way, the snake is officially the Arizona Diamondbacks mascot, the Snakes. So unfortunately, this is probably much ado about nothing, but a snake did show up yesterday at Dodger Stadium. We thought we would show it to you. That'll do it for the show today. Thanks again to Sam McQuillan from Legal Sports Report. In addition, Bill Bender from Sporting News. And of course, thanks to OJ McDuffie from the Fish Tank Podcast for coming on the show as well. Coming up next, we have the early line. You'll hear me discuss the trade with the Jets and the Raiders, and me pretty much saying it was a horrible trade for the Jets. Pharrell Coast to Coast, 3 o'clock Eastern, Game Time Decisions, In-Game Live, got you covered for tonight's baseball game between the Yankees and Guardians, and then Sports Rage tonight with a recap of baseball and 3 college football games tonight. By the way, NBA season starts next week too. Lots of preseason games as well, if betting on preseason basketball is your thing. Thanks again to our director, Luke, and for my producer, Frank. I'm Craig Mish. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day if you're sticking around with us here on SportsGrid. If not, I'll see you back here tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, for our next edition of NewsWire. See you then.